Hey, what's going on, guys? The Visible Team Stand and Draw here, bringing you guys a deck profile of Asama's Megacolony deck. He took this to Worlds wrecked shit up.
I did.
So, with further ado, I'll hand it over to Asama.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Yeah, just like the Visual has just now introduced, I'm Asama Taga from Team Stand and Draw, and I'm going to throw you a deck profile for my G Megacolony. And if you got any questions about it, leave it in the comment section below. And with that said and done, let's dive into it. Starting Vanguard is Young Executive Crime Bug. His skill is GB1. Act ability, put into the soul. Select a unit on board, and it cannot intercept and it cannot stand next turn. Now, for reasons being obviously, ideally, and as of right now, as of the current meta, you'd want to play this instead of any other starter outside of machining, so to speak, is because this here, the prime definition of G Megas is to keep everything on the board stunned. Your opponent's board is your board. You hold the ability to make sure your opponent cannot do a single thing, as Mega should be doing. So, obviously and ideally, Crime Bug would be your starting Vanguard. Anything else other than that, in terms of stratagem, or strat for that matter, for Crime Bug, you always want to remember with G Megacolony, with the new ability of stopping units from intercepting, Crime Bug is a very free means to go about doing that. So, let's say you're going for a large field stun, you would want at most to try to go about using 2 counterblasts, with the exception of Darkface's skill being one of the counterblasts that you're going to use, and having this being the second means to it. And this will always go for grade 2s. Crime Bug is always a grade 2 means to stun, so always just make sure that anytime you use it, unless in the given scenario that you feel like there's a special reason why you need to stun grade 1 with this, otherwise you go for grade 2s. There's no other reason why you want to go for anything other than 2s with Crime Bug. Because remember, your prime objective with current G Megas is to make sure that you also stop the means to intercept. So that's your starter Crime Bug. Grade 3s. I'll start with 1, 2, 3, and 4. For Darkface, Darkface's skill. First skill is well, I'll start with the second skill actually. Is his break stride skill is when you stride over this unit, counterblast 1, and you select 2 units on board, and they cannot stand next turn, and they're also given the effect of if both of these units are on rest state at the end of your opponent's turn, you are allowed to draw the cards off of the skills that you gave those said units the effect to. So, and believe me when I say, as all break strides is only a single counterblast, this can be very deadly, especially as, like I said, G Mega is in control of your opponent's board. The second you decide to apply this effect to the grade 1s, as you should only to, your opponent will not only be forced to reconsider what he plays, he'll also have to think about whether or not it'd be smart to play anything at all. That's what it is, because honestly, dropping your hand and have to keep replacing units is the one thing that'll kill your opponent. And grade 1s is especially one of your most important units inside the deck. So, with that in mind, by default, you might as well just keep on keeping them with 1s pinned down. They're not going to go anywhere, so as long as those grade 1s are important and have a consistent use to be on the board. So that's the reason why Darkface is essential. And also, with that in mind, you also, a quick tip is to make sure that you don't spam this effect. Yes, it's very convenient, and it also gives us the perfect means for more adequate hand power throughout the duration of the game. But this also could potentially leave you close to potentially decking out at some point late in the game. So you also have to remember, at what points do I just want to use the effect to stun the grade 1s, and at what points do I want to draw to actually get the adequate hand power you need throughout certain points of the match. So that's Darkface's break stride skill. Something you want to keep in mind. And the second skill is the GB2 skill. One of the very few on opponent turn responsive skills in the game. Next to Google Ref and Gold Paladins, his skill is GB2. When an opponent's unit is placed on the rear guard circle at any point during the game, at any point during your opponent's turn, you Soul Blast 2, and your opponent is forced to rest that unit for the remainder of that turn. So, and believe me when I say, I've never been more pleased with an effect for Megacolony than I have been with this GB2 unit, with this GB2 skill. To be honest with you, it's very convenient, it's fast, and it really works in your favor if you select the right units. Yes, so to speak, soul charging is it's still a tad difficult for us Megacolony players, but not to say that we can't find a ways to compensate for that. there's still different ways to soul charge. And so with that in mind, once you know you have an adequate amount of soul, the most you'll be able to do it is 4 to 5 times, maybe 6 times best if you're lucky. You have to be sure to get rid of any potential grade 2s that you feel like will be a very large problem, and stun them on cue and on the rip at the very point they hit the board. And that's one of the biggest conveniences of Darkface. It's really to stop all potential multiple attacks at any point during the game on your opponent's turn. And literally to the point where you're dropping your opponent's number of attacks down to just the Vanguard. And if you can do that with GB2 without having to waste the entirety of all your soul, then you just find yourself a one-way ticket to almost a whole free turn by simply just perfect guarding your the opponent's Vanguard. That's the reason why the GB2 skill is so good. So, with that said, that's my first set of grade 3s. My next one is I run 2 Cyclomatooth. Break Ride. This is from one of the earlier sets.
Set 15.
Yeah, set 15. This skill is a break ride. When you ride over this unit, all of the units on board are forcefully stunned, and not a single one of them can stand on the next turn. So that also includes the Vanguard. Now, Cyclomatooth, hypothetically speaking, most Megacolony players would actually play this at 4 optimally, with the scenario that you'll break ride over break ride over break ride. But the thing about it is that the chances of you doing that constantly in every game that you play isn't really 100%, nor is it about 50. So idealistically, the way I see it is playing it at 2 in a scenario that you do get Cyclomatooth in your hand as your first ride grade 3 with the potential of having another grade 3 in hand. You'd want to ride this first to set yourself up for something big later on. Plus, there's other units inside the deck that actually combo well with Cyclomatooth and help for much more bigger plays over time. And plus, not to mention, the field stun itself really hurts because not only is everything on the board stunned, nothing standing next turn along with the Vanguard, so now your opponent has to contemplate on whether or not they want to waste resources to rebuild their board, or do they just want to pass the turn over to keep everything they have. And by simply passing the turn to you, or back to you for that matter, you now have the ability to take advantage of the free turn you was given. So this gives you advantage to be actually to be able to prepare for for either a defensive turn or prepare for an offensive turn when the turn is being given back. So this is the convenience of it. It's pretty much giving you a free turn. It's really nice. And it also puts your opponent on edge on debating whether or not they should waste their resource to rebuild or try to give themselves an upper edge, potentially, during their turn. So that's Cyclomatooth. And last but not least, I play 2 Longhorn Hunter. His skill is his one and only skill is GB1. Counterblast 1 on placement on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. You select one of your opponent's rear guards, and they cannot stand or intercept for the remainder of that turn. Well, they can't stand next turn and cannot intercept the turn that this effect was activated. So Longhorn, yes, hypothetically speaking, you'd want to look for least uses to use Counterblast, since most of your Counterblast will work towards your Strides and Darkface's skill. But by having good Counterblast management, you should be able to know that Longhorn could be more of a it could actually help you more than it would hinder you. Plus, on top of that, not a lot of units that we were given for not a lot of units that we were given in the set that Longhorn and Darkface came through were actually given the ability to actually Giga Stun, in which case, stop intercepting and stop standing, where we don't have many means to that. So Longhorn, being a convenient a grade 3 on placement, is actually really nice to have. It's fast, and it also makes sure that in the scenario that your opponent decides to try to intercept, if you don't have Cocktail on board, playing this right off the back definitely helps. Your opponent won't see it coming. They won't expect the Longhorn to be playing on board, the chances are. So his skill is just as convenient as the next skill is. So a reason not to play him, I'm not gonna say it would be foolish, but it also is pretty nice to have. I wouldn't completely throw it out of the way to say that Giga Stunning at the cost of a Counterblast is inconvenient. Because if anything, it really does help. And I'll admittingly say, during one of my games, my opponent did not expect me to play Longhorn, and when I did play it and he realized he wasn't allowed to intercept, thinking that all of my cocktails were done, he was in for a big surprise. So you can only imagine how that went for him. So yeah, that's Longhorn. That's my grade 3s. Grade 2s, I go 1, 2, 3. I go 3 Cocktail. Cocktail skill is Counterblast 1. Select a unit on board. When this unit attacks and is boosted, you select one of your opponent's rear guards on board, and you Giga Stun it by stopping it from intercepting that turn and not standing next turn. Also, it's at the end of your opponent's turn. If this unit is still rested, by being given the effect by Cocktail, you draw a card. So, in other words, Cocktail is like she's amazing. I'm just gonna bluntly put it out there. You know she's amazing. But it's just yeah, Cocktail has a lot on her table, and a lot to eat. And if you're hungry, you're probably gonna want to eat it if you got an empty stomach. She gives a lot on the table, so conveniently enough, only because it's a single counterblast. Yes, counterblast. We are a big counterblast heavy, but again, it's all comes down to counterblast management. So, and also drawing a card, stopping your opponent from standing, and also preventing them from intercepting all in one turn. I can't understand how any minus would potentially come off of that. So it's just like it really comes down to like determining whether or not when you should use a skill and at what point you shouldn't use it. The thing about it is with Cocktail, just like you would with Longhorn and Darkface, her skill only applies to the grade 2s. That's the thing. You could sometimes be cheeky about it and put it on grade 1s, depending on how you feel, since you also draw a card off units. So sometimes it's optional, but Cocktail is the only unit of the Giga Stunning units that allows you to determine whether or not you want to put it on a grade 1 or a grade 2. But idealistically, because you're Giga Stunning, you'd want to put it on a 2. But since your opponent is likely going to replace the grade 2, depending on how many they have on board, from a strategical perspective, you potentially might want to put it on a grade 1 as well. But it all depends on the scenario. It's situational. You have to choose wisely. But most likely, sticking to how the card is supposed to be used, you'd want to place its effect on a grade 2. That's the reason why. And if anything, your opponent really, and also at the end of the day, you also have to make sure that by when playing Cocktail, if your opponent sees Cocktail on board, they're going to want to get rid of this. This is the reason why you want to try to play more than one. You want to have as many options to Giga Stun in this deck as possible. So that's the reason why as soon as they see Cocktail, she's already a potential target. So if they get rid of your Cocktails, you have other means to Giga Stun. So it's not really the end of the world. You might not be able to draw for them, but you'll still stop your opponent from standing, and you'll also stop them from intercepting. I play 2 Abyss Diver. Now, I'll definitely admit, a lot of people will question the reason why Abyss Diver is played. One, there's some cons to playing him. One, he's an AK. And 2, it's like after his usage, he's kind of like a vanilla unit. So it's like I can understand the drop size to actually playing Abyss Diver, but let's not all forget that, like I said, the prime concept to G Megas is is putting complete control over your opponent's field. Literally, his or her board is your board. The second you start Giga Stunning everything, your opponent cannot do a single thing but decide whether or not they want to get rid of something. That's really all it is. That applied before Giga Stun, and it applies even stronger now that we have it. So it's just, I wouldn't see any point. It might be an AK vanilla, but having the skill is better not having it at all. That's how I see it. And just like I said, with all the other units I've explained so far, it all comes down to counterblast management. So I'll admit, amazingly enough, because this isn't Generation Break, as Cocktail was, which I possibly didn't mention, because Abyss Diver isn't Generation Break, including this can actually be used early game. So this comes on to whether or not you actually want to be cheeky about it, put it on a random grade 1 on board early game, so they can't swing on you for a full number and you can retain damage, or put it on an interceptor and just to make it so your opponent doesn't have too many options to work with. Because like I said, I'll admit, immediately enough, G Megacolony makes it easier to the point where now early game your opponent really can't swing at you too fast. It really can't. If you actually play the right units in this build, your opponent cannot hit you too fast and too quickly. It doesn't matter what your opponent is playing. Well, with the exception of Shadow Pounders, Grand Blue, and Tachikaze, things like that. But outside of that, if you're playing clans that need a board, your opponent can't swing at you too fast. You're playing units like Abyss Diver and Cocktail and, units that just relatively just stun in general. So Abyss Diver is definitely convenient to have. So with the skill, it's Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, pretty much Glimmer Clone, on place on Van or Rearguard. You select the unit on board, and they can't intercept, and they can't stand next turn. Just like I said, having the skill is better than not having it, but if you're really too concerned about the use of Counterblast, only because we don't have an unflipping engine yet, you don't have to play them. This is more preference, to be honest. I just feel I can manage my Counterblast well enough that I can actually use Abyss Diver really, really effectively. But this is actually a nice card to use overall. Sticking to the trade. I play 2 Machining Armor Beetle. Armor Beetle skill is on place on Van or Rearguard. Select a unit on your board, put it into your soul, and then select the unit on your opponent's board, and they can't stand next turn. Now, obviously, reasons why I play this at 2. It's not really relative. It's not really a tech card. It's actually something that helps flow, keeps the flow of the game in terms of my engine going the way at the speed that I want it to. So not only does Armor Beetle provide soul during the game, it also gives me a fast stun. Now, there's no Giga Stunning, but if I could just stun your unit in general and achieve soul at the same time for Darkface's skill next turn, I really can't see where the inconvenience in that is. And on top of that, what makes it even better is that if you play your board correctly enough, you can actually make it so you can open up a free slot to actually play a unit over, so you won't have to worry about getting rid of a unit. That's actually one of the convenience about it. But it also comes down to board placement. You have to know what you're placing, where you're placing it, and whether or not you want to actually potentially get rid of something or just drop it as a whole. So it's just like you actually can clean board pretty effectively while actually getting soul and actually stunning units. So it's like Armor Beetle is like a cocktail, but you have to be a little careful about how you use it. So that's the reason why I like it. I play 2 of Machine Papio. Papio skills on placement on rear guard. You select a unit on your opponent's board and you stun it, and it can't stand next turn. So this is as free as it's gonna get. AK Vanilla, yes, but you have to realize the convenience of being able to do a stun without the need of any possible repercussions. That's the reason why Papio is convenient. Played in almost any mega deck idealistically. It's as free as it's gonna get in terms of stunning, and you can't hope for anything better. Plus, on top of that, what makes it better is no sooner as you actually use the skill, you can use it as an intercept. If they decide to get rid of it, it's convenient to you. Like I said, along with actually taking control of your opponent's board, another thing you want to keep in mind is that you shouldn't have to care too much about your board either. Because if you actually care too much about your board, you're giving your opponent the advantage you want, that they want actually. Excuse me. So all you have to do is drop the mindset of caring for your board and notice that once skills have gone off, your units don't have too much meaning in staying on. If you feel like you want to keep it, well, unless it's cocktail, but if you have anything else on board that you don't need, let them take it. Because at the end of the day, like I said, their board is yours, so you already know what you're doing. That's the reason why Papio is good, because the stun is free. Very free, no repercussions, and the only possible drawback to it is that it's an AK. But like I said, once the skill's used, it's done with. You can let it go. There's no reason to keep it. And last but not least, I play 2 Bloody Hercules. In the current meta that we're in now, any defense is just as strong as a good offense. So, and 10K Vanillas to this day, even as of the current game, is just it's better to feel safe than sorry. So hypothetically, if you ride Bloody Hercules as your first grade 2, and you get a defensive trigger, your opponent is not touching you for the rest of that turn. Because chances are, unless they're playing something like Dark Irregulars and maybe a couple other decks, you probably won't be getting hit for a stupid high number. And even if they get a trigger and put it on a rear guard, it still won't hit for the number that it should to actually pass through your Vanguard. So 10K Vanillas are definitely really nice to have. So playing it at 2 is really nice. Grade 1s. I play 1, 2, 3, 4, as anyone should. 4 unflipping PGs, Rebel Star Mutant, Star Shield. Obviously it's an unflipping PG. You want to play. Obviously you have to play this at 4 because, like I said, counterblast management it's a little difficult, but Star Shield makes this just a tad bit easier. Also, throughout majority of the game, if your opponent realizes that you can't stun beetle at some point, but you somehow have 1 in drop and one in hand, it's over. If you decide to go stun beetle, the thing about it is that where you can unflip damage, you also have to be very careful about how you go about selecting what units to do skills for, because you won't be able to go Darkface and then go straight into stun beetle, because that's 3 whole counterblasts. And if you don't have any star shields in your hand and any in drop zone to unflip damage, you're going to be a deadbeat if you don't have the right stride lineup to be able to throw yourself back into the game and give yourself upper hand. So sometimes there'll be times when you shouldn't use Darkface's skill and just go try and attempt to actually swing with stun beetle, and there'll be times when you'll simply just be doing Darkface and probably just won't do anything else after that. You have to be able to retain your damage, but that's only in a scenario that you don't have star shield in your hand and you cannot flip. But otherwise, he's pretty much a necessity to make sure that your damage stays as clean as possible, to make sure you can get off certain skills. Every skill that you have in this deck with Megacolony is optional. If you feel like you can retain the counterblast and actually manage it well enough, you can use them in the scenario that you can flip your damage with Star Shield. So that's the reason why he's here. Okay, I play 1, 2, 3. I play 3 Machine Mosquito. Hypothetically speaking, I used to play this at 4, but there were some things that came up which kind of brought me to it brought me to summary that apparently playing this at 4 was a little cloggy, but if I can manage my soul well enough and I actually had another means to soul charge, then playing this at 3 wouldn't hurt me as much. That's what brought me to actually playing Machining Armor Beetle, because he's the other means to soul charge outside of Machining Mosquito. So put 1 and 2 together, and it's like I don't have to be too cloggy at playing this at 4. But it's at the end of the day, the skill is on placement on Van or Rear Guard, Soul Charge 1. Very simplistic, very generic skill, way back from one of the very first sets. So, and idealistically, when you're playing G-Megas, you need your soul for Darkface. He needs to be able to eat his soul so he can get stuff and pin him down on the floor. So this is the reason why you want to play him. Unless you have another means to actually soul charge, I don't see why you wouldn't play this. So it's just that at the end of the day, if this is your first ride, that's all well and nice. Anything's fine. It could be your first ride or your first rear guard. Anything's fine. At the end of the day, you're still getting the resources that you need to do Darkface's skill. That's the reason why he's played. I play, and then there's also 1, 2, 3. I play Phantom Black. Now, sure, we have Megacolony Battler B, which is the other AK vanilla that we have from the most recent set, BT3, I believe it is. I think it's 3. But from a preferable, perspective, I kind of like Phantom Black because it's the first AK vanilla that I actually came to like out of most of the clans that I play now. He's his art's just really interesting, and on top of that, outside of the preference of reasons why, skill wise, AK vanillas to just as much as 10Ks are, they're very convenient defensive base. So if you get a defensive trigger, just like with Bloody Hercules, you're 13. So on grade 1s, if your opponent doesn't get a trigger and you get a trigger, your opponent the rest of them riz are not touching you. That's really what it is. So you just, like I said, better safe than sorry. Your best defense is the best offense. That's why you play AK vanillas. I mean, with the convenience of actually getting the defensive trigger. Plus, that 8's pretty helpful. Because, you have no idea when your opponent is also going to play an AK and you play a 7K, but you move the starter to the left and your Vanguard's in the middle. So how are you hitting them if your opponent's an AK? Especially because you wanted to make a row and go 1, 2, 3, and you just want to go Van and then have this row here. Can't really happen if you're a 7K and your opponent's an AK. So sometimes it's convenient to ride the AK at times. So if your opponent wants to be cheeky and ride an AK, you can swing at him and actually hit him, not just sit there like a rock. So that's the reason why I play AKs. Pretty good. Last but not least, 1, 2, 3, 4. For Strike Fighter. Obviously we're in the G era. I don't feel a reason why you shouldn't play Strike Fighters, but if you feel like it isn't too cloggy, you should play them. In G Megas preferably, you really do need the Stride Fighters because, in my opinion personally, there's a lot of games I feel like where Megacolony players do not stride unless they got that Stride Fighter. And dropping grade 3s seems to hurt us a lot more than it should, especially when we want to re-ride for something outside of G's. Like, for instance, machining, Stag Beetle, they have to re-ride to keep on doing the skill. That way they can get off machining carapace a lot easier and much faster. If they have to drop Stag Beetle, then they can't get off Carapace's skill, and they have to play cards from hand and commit to board in order to get off Carapace's skill easier. As opposed to actually dropping a Stride Fighter, rewriting and dropping a Stride Fighter. They got the board by auto. They didn't have to commit to board from hand, and all they had to do was drop a card, and they can get Carapace off. That's the reason why I feel like it's more convenient for Megas technically speaking, if anything else, to actually have the Stride Fighters. We have to use a lot less as opposed to just like any other clan to actually get off what we need. Plus, Genius Strategy hasn't come out, so we're still a little limited on what we can use, but it comes down to a level of improvision and management. So, having the Stride Fighter is nice. Plus, on top of that, if you play a backup grade 3, which obviously you are, not unless you're cheeky enough to play 4, I don't know why you do that. You'd honestly, let's say hypothetically you get Longhorn or you get Cyclamen Tooth, but you actually want to run the game by Darkface. You'd actually want to play this, fish it, and then drop something else after it. That way you have Darkface to run away next turn. So, it's really how it goes. Triggers. I play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 crit. Obviously, at this point in the game, I feel like Megacolony didn't really have too much of an offensive means, so going 12 crit is the best way to go. If you aren't going 12 crit, then your opponent doesn't have too much to be scared of if you aren't hitting a crit every other turn. But you also shouldn't be relying too much on triggers. You remember that your board is your means of control. crits, it's the plus. Since your opponent can't intercept because of the Giga Stunning, everything's coming from their hand. That's really what it is. Everything. Their means to guard is coming from their hand. It's no longer their board. If they try to intercept, you look at them and say, nah, stop that. None of that. That's Giga Stun. That ain't intercepting. And then that's when, here, all of that. That's just all crits. Just swing at them. They can't intercept. It's coming. If they want to block, it's coming from that hand. So it's like 12 crit. That's really honestly the way to go at this point. Personally for me, but it's preference. You can go 10 crit and play the stand trigger at 3 or 3, 2. Or if you want to just go 8 crit, 4 stand. I mean, honestly, I used to play the stand, but I don't like it that much anymore. I feel like it's easy. I can build hand just as effectively. So it's just yeah, with that 12 crit, I feel like it's just as aggressive as any other build, and I feel like at this point the crit was actually needed. Hopefully in Genius Strategy did we actually get a self-generating crit outside of machining, and if we do, that'd be nice. I'd probably drop the crits if we get that. And I play 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 heals. Obviously, we need them 4 heals for G Guardians. If you're not running 4 heals, then pretty cheeky actually. I don't know why you wouldn't want heal triggers when we have G Guardians, especially if you don't crit them fast. If you're really that focused on trying to crit them with 16 crit, and then suddenly you don't get the crits, and then your opponent decides to do the same to you, it'll be inconvenient if you can't heal. So you would play heal triggers, right? Right. Yeah. Something like that. That's my triggers. And moving on to strides. Hold up a second. First off, I play 1, 2, 3 Paraspirit. Paraspirit skill is on placement on Vanguard when you stride. If there's 3 or more units on board rested in a resting state, you draw a card and get +5. Very convenient. It helps to attain fast hand, and it also gives you an opportunity for quick power play. So honestly, at the end of the day, what you really want to use Paraspirit's main mega focus for is to get you hand. Because no matter what you fight against, if something's way too aggressive and hits hard too fast, you want to be able to build hand first before you go in for the kill later. And Paraspirit Paraspirit helps build toward that. That's the reason why I run him at 3. And any like fighting against other field control decks like maybe Link Joke or something like that, you're gonna need hand to survive against them when you don't have a board to use. Especially since, like I said before, you shouldn't care about your board. You're going to need hand to survive their attacks. So Paraspirit is here to help, fuel that. Outside of Darkface. More means to draw is better. I play 1, 2 Staggle Dipper. Staggle Dipper's skill is it's an axe skill. Counterblast 1. And the number of units on your opponent's board that are on rest state, you give 3 units on your board the ability to get +1 for every unit on their board rested. So hypothetically, it's a nice little fast a nice little buff during game. Hypothetically, if you have Staggle on board, your opponent is playing Royals or any other board with 4 more units that they need on board to get something going, you'll give it to 1, 2, 3. Be cheeky about it. If anything, you have Trooper on board, Poison Trooper, which actually by default just stops your opponent from intercepting when it swings. You can give the effect of Staggle Dipper to Trooper, and then give it to a unit behind it. Probably swinging for like 30, no intercept. Give it a crit. It's 35, no intercept, and a crit. Your opponent's gonna have to drop all a hand or Perfect Guard or G Guardian. So they wasted a whole Perfect Guard on a rear guard. So that also brings you a step closer to getting off Stun Beetle. So it's like this. Staggle Dip will definitely help with fast play, easy hand dropping. It's actually pretty convenient. I like it. Plus on top of that, it helps set up GB2 really early for Darkface's skill. I play 1, 2, 3 G Guardians. Obviously, when your opponent has 2 or more units on board in a rest state, this unit gets +5. Probably one of the fastest and easiest G Guardian effects to actually get off with little hassle. Because 9 times out of 10, when your opponent probably swings, there probably are going to be 2 units that are rested unless they're feeling cheeky and don't want to boost and don't want to swing entirely, and they decide to go Vanguard first out of everything else on the board. That would be a bad idea because you have to boost. You really have to boost. Not unless you literally just go Vanguard and you don't have a booster behind it. Then honestly, it's just 26 if you stride swinging. I'm just gonna G Guardian that. Yeah, we're just gonna do that. That's not gonna. And then I'm just put a card down, say 2 to pass, and you probably won't even get it. So at that point, if you don't boost or if you don't use another unit to actually get extra power for it, then you're probably not hitting me for a good number, which I can either 1 intercept or 2 just drop a 10 for it. So it's just like. I'm getting this effect off no matter what you do. That's really what it is. You have to swing for a high number, otherwise you're not hitting me. So that's really what it is. That's G Guardian. And last but not least, I play 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 Stun Beetle. Stun Beetle skill is GB2. GB2 effect Counter Blast 2. When its unit attack hits, your opponent is not allowed to stand, not allowed to re-ride, and pretty much it's just a complete turn skip. It's a turn skip if your opponent decides not to do anything with their rear guards, because their Vanguard cannot do a single thing. They can't re-ride, they can't stand, and they can't stride even if they want to. So it doesn't make a difference. They're literally a sitting duck if you get this off. So at that point, this is probably the scariest asset of the deck. And if your opponent decides to let you get Stun Beetle off, which the way I built my deck, I worked toward it to the point where my opponent is forced to let me hit. If I get this off, the rest of the game is mine. That's really what it is. The conditions pretty much have been met where Stun Beetle is going to be the reason why the rest of the game goes in my favor. So with that said, yeah, his skill is terrifying, and depending what the next GR is going to be when it comes out, I can't wait to see it. Stun Beetle is probably one of the biggest and most strongest access to the Megacolony clans of right now. And with that said and done, that's my deck profile. It's Asama, and I'll see you guys later.